Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our fades and sleepers for this week's Rocket Mortgage Classic. Gonna bring you some of the over and under hyped GPP plays that you want to consider while building your lineups tonight that are either going to be getting a little bit too much steam for my liking, or in a few cases maybe aren't getting the deserved attention that I think they should be getting, and you might want to consider adding to a few of your DFS lineups. So a lot of game theory to get into. Let's start with our top two fades of the week. There are often times where we'll start our fades with an option up here in the 9-10K range, but ownership this week is extremely spread out. There aren't any players that are sub 10% owned, and pretty much everyone's getting at least 15 to probably like 22% ownership. So up top, just pick your 3-4 favorite players, especially if you're playing a bunch of lineups, and move on, really. I don't think you have to fade anyone because they're getting more steam than others, because even Ricky Fowler, who I have as by far the highest owned player on the slate, is only like 2.5% higher owned than the next option, which I believe was Hideki Matsuyama at like 22% ownership. So up top, if you want to take a few chalky players, I think that's more than fine. The important part is to hone in on 3-4 core players, and then try and leverage yourself on those 4 spots. But where we're going to start our fades is, I think, in a range where you have to start to differentiate, right? Up top, you can take some chalk. They're world-class players. I think the talent gap difference between these 9-10K options and then what we have here in the lower 9s, the higher 8s, is massive. And then when you get down here to the 7K range, even the top ends of the 7s, that drop-off happens once again. So for somebody like Eckroat, that probably should be up there, let's say with Brian Harman, Steven Yeager, in terms of price tag, a ton of people are going to get there, right? When you have names around him like a Hadwin, a Benny Ann, who are respectable plays. I mean, even like a Taylor Moore, we'll talk about Aaron Rye here in a second. Eckroat is clearly better than the rest. So you may say, Luke, why are you fading him then? Well, it has to come down to the 17.5% ownership mark. Right? I'm projecting him to be nearly 20% owned in single entries, in higher dollar kind of GPPs, like the 555, 777, that kind of thing. He's going to be 20, maybe even 25, 30% owned. So you're looking at a guy that's going to get a lot of steam, and it's all because of the recent form. So we'll go through, right, why he's a decent play. T24, T10, T30, T16 finish. But if you've played PGA DFS, guys, you know that all good streaks come to an end, right? It's volatile. It's hard enough to go on a streak of 4 straight tournaments where you're absolutely killing it, and even harder to go out there and do it for 5 straight weeks. And why I think that this might be the end of the golden run for Austin here would be the putter. He's been on his best stretch of golf for his entire career and is still only gaining 0.3 strokes per round with the flat stick. You take a look at the last 36 rounds, it doesn't fall off all that much, but he's still only gaining 0.2 strokes per round. And this is us getting Austin at his absolute peak performance, right? There is no better stretch of run of form that you've seen for Austin Eckroat in his entire career. So at a Birdie Fest, at a Rocket Mortgage Classic, where we might see something like 25 to 30 under par winning this golf tournament, I don't know if I'm going to be playing 35% Austin Eckroat this week when he's not an elite tier putter. The numbers on Ben Poa have been pretty decent over the years, I'll give him that. But when we take a look at the event history here, you'll see that in his first ever trip, which was 2 years ago, it resulted in a missed cut. So it's not like he's killed it on these greens specifically. So I get the ownership, I get the recent form. I mean, right, it's hard to ignore 4 straight top 30 finishes, but there are guys around him at half, sometimes 3-4 times lower ownership numbers, and I think that are the same, if not better, plays that you can get to. So of course, we're going to talk about Tom Hoge here in just a little bit. I think one of those pivots that you could consider. But yeah, if you're playing cash, maybe you still take an Austin Eckroat. Maybe if you're okay with eating the chalk down here, do so. But I'm eating a lot of chalk up here in the 9 and 10K range, and I can't be taking him as my 3rd or 4th man in a lineup. Our next fade is another player in this 7K range, but don't be, kidded here. I have a ton of other guys in this 7K range, and I'm pivoting off of based on ownership. And just to reiterate, right up top, there's some chalk up there, but they're world-class players. This 7K range, especially in this week of a field, is maybe you have a few diamonds in the rough, right, that are getting that ownership, but they're not for sure prospects, right? Their hit rates are probably still sub 10%, right, to go out there, finish in the top 5, top 10. So when somebody like an Aaron Rye is 12 12.4% owned. There are a ton towards the middle, towards the bottom end of the 7K range as well. You really, really got to like them to be playing them in your lineups, because you have plenty of options down here that are going to be 2-3% owned, sometimes even less than 1% owned, especially when you get to the bottom end of this range. The concerns for Aaron Rai, very similar, right? Aaron Rai, not the best putter on the PGA Tour. In fact, you can see over his last 12 rounds is losing. Over his last 36 rounds, he's also losing pretty significantly with the flat stick. So it's not horrendous. It's not like he's losing a stroke per round, but he gets it done with the ball striking, which we like at harder golf courses. I don't love him at these birdie fest type of affairs. He could still go out there, throw darts on a soft course. He could still prove me wrong for sure, but it's going to take him gaining like 15 strokes tee to green to go out there, contend, or maybe even win this golf tournament, right? To get to 25 to 30 under par, he's going to have the ball striking week of his life to go out there and do so. And at 12.4% ownership, it clearly exceeds his hit rate out there, right? For going out there having that top 5, top 10. So I think Aaron Rai a little bit easier to fade than an Austin Eckroat, but Eckroat at 17.5%, that's, I don't want to say it's ridiculous, but it's borderline ridiculous when it comes to the steam that he's getting. And that's only for GPPs, let alone what you'll see in some of the single entry, some of the cash contests, where Eckroat is just going to be some of the more egregious chalk that we've seen for quite some time. On the other end of the spectrum, though, there are a ton of sleeper plays we can get to, right? So just, kind of like the fades there, we're only going to go over 2 here in the video, but there are plenty of low-owned options you can take as pivots. And 2 that I guess I want to point out, we'll start with Tom Hoge at $8,400, is you're looking for players with upside that can go out there, throw some darts, and fill it up with the flat stick. And the really top long term, right? If we look at the last 50, 100 round baselines, Tom Hoge laps Austin Eckroat, right? It's not even close, right? But if you look at the last 12 or the last 36 measured rounds, like I do with a lot of my analysis, it looks like 9-day difference, right? Austin Eckroat is clearly, we'll put that in quotes, much better than Tom Hoge. Long term, guys, you guys know I'm a much more of a baseline sort of guy, especially when I'm playing in these GPP contests. I'm all about taking players that have maybe struggled over the last 3-4 weeks, but long term are just much better than that form, right? It's not that I hate recent form. I definitely play my fair share of recent form sort of players, but not when they're 17.5% owned. So for me, a Tom Hoge, a player that, let's look at the actual recent form, right? Let's see what it's actually resulted in. T60 missed cut. He's at least been making cuts, but you can see they've all been like 50th or 60th place finishes. So he's getting into the weekend. We talked him up last week here. He made the cut. He finished T60 for us, but he hasn't been doing anything with it. So he's clearly not playing all that poorly. He's still finishing in the top 40th, 45th percentile of all of these large fields. So I think he's a lot closer than people would expect. The modeling is not going to like him because he's still losing strokes to the field despite making those cuts. That's how poorly he's playing on the weekend. He's only 4.5% owned. You can't tell me that he's 4 times less likely to succeed than somebody like an Austin Eckroat, right? Who I know has been the hot topic over the last month. But long term, Tom Hoge's the same, if not a much better player than what you have for Eckroat. Has actually gone to a tour win before, right? He's actually gone out there, finished top 5 in a lot of tour events, despite being on this recent stretch of form. I'm not trying to shit on the play too much out here, but Eckroat, right? His best finish is a T10 finish, at least over those last 5 starts. Granted, a lot of them are elevated fields. It was major championships in a few cases. It's not like we were expecting him to go out there and finish top 5. But Tom Hoge's gone out there and done it before. Even in major championship kind of fields, gone out there, finished top 5, top 10. So let's not act like Eckroat is just, out of nowhere the better player here. The last sleeper we're getting to is a little bit cheaper, super low owned. I shouldn't say super low owned. For this range, I would say pretty average when it comes to the ownership. 5.4%, of course, compared to some of the top end options would be low owned. But I like Akshay Batia's upside here. He's going off in the morning, which I think gives him a good chance to go out there, post something low tomorrow. But if you need somebody to get to 25, 30 under par, somebody to take apart an easy, wide open golf course, I think Akshay's the perfect character for it. He's taken apart some of the international events, some of the alternate field events in the past, and while this field's clearly not as weak as what you've seen there, he has the kind of skill set that translates well, right, to a resort-style golf course. He dominated the Korn Ferry Tour, another kind of format where you see a lot of 20 to 25 under par scores kind of winning. And if you look at just pure old birdie or better percentage this year, he's top 30 on all of the PGA Tour, let alone in this field where he's top 10 in that category. So at 7 grand, I think he's more than cheap enough. And honestly, people like playing Akshay. So that's the only reason I got him at 5.4%, because if it weren't for that, the recent form would probably have him at like 2-3% owned. So I kind of wish that he wasn't as popular, right? Especially given the skill set that he has, or else he would be an even lower owned option. But even at 5.4%, you take him in 10-15% of lineups, you can easily get leverage there. If not, if you're a little bit more aggressive about your exposure, like I'm going to be this week. I'll just go ahead and say it. I'm playing at least 25% Akshay Batia this week. He'll be one of the larger stands that I'm taking down here, and it's not just an Akshay, it's not just a Tom Hoagie. There are going to be a ton of pivots that I'm taking down here in the 7s. Just an example of some other pieces of chalk. Carson Young, super highly owned at this point. Let's see, up here in the mid 7s, there's quite a bit of chalk to worry about. Let's see, some of the notables, Nate Lashley getting some attention, right? Past winner at this golf tournament. Mark Hubbard chalk. You've got chalk coming in on guys like Aaron Rye that we talked about before, and Austin Eckroat. There are about 4 or 5 other players there that are 10% plus owned. You don't have to fade every single one of them, right? There's probably a few that you might want to throw into some lineups, but you should fade most of those players. Just go take a lot of pivots like we had there with the Hoagie, like we've had there with some of the other pivots we've talked about in my value plays, core plays throughout the week, and you've got yourself a DFS lineup to run with. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for the fades and sleepers this week. Of course, we'll be doing our live stream tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Should make sure to stop on by for that with all your questions. We'll go through the weather, ownership, chalk, all that sort of fun stuff to make sure we can go out there and crush it this week. So yeah, set a reminder for that. There's a link down below. Also go ahead, smash the like button for me on the way out of here. It goes a huge way with helping me grow the channel, get this out there to even more eyeballs. And of course, go ahead and comment down below who you're fading this week, right? So maybe one of the higher owned players that you're just not as sold on, and then also your sleeper of the week. And the criterion for sleeper play is we're just gonna go at least like mid to low ownership given their price range. So if they're up there in like the 8K plus, right, anything in the single digits, I would say would probably be a sleeper play, and anything like in the 6 and 7K range, let's say like sub 5%. So we'll go with that, guys. I appreciate all the support here as per usual. I'll see you guys at the live stream tonight, and maybe we go out there and see our names towards the top of some of these GPP leaderboards.